My boyfriend posted, "Just bought my dream car." It was my car, re-registered in his name using forged signatures. I didn't panic. I didn't confront him. I simply reported the car stolen. 3 days later, he got pulled over while driving it with his friends, who were recording everything for Instagram. He was arrested for grand theft auto. I discovered my boyfriend stole my car while I was eating lunch at my desk. No warning, no build-up, just an Instagram post that made my stomach drop. There it was on my screen, him, smiling like he'd won something. My 2019 BMW M3 parked behind him, polished and perfect. In his hand, dangling casually between his fingers, were my keys. The caption froze me in place. Finally manifested my dream car into reality. Hard work pays off. The comments were flooding in. Friends congratulating him, asking for rides, hyping him up like he'd just crossed some milestone he deserved. I couldn't swallow. My sandwich sat untouched as the realization crept in, slow and cold. I bought that car 18 months ago. $52,000. Cash. Title in my name, insurance in my name, registration in my name, or so I believed. We'd been together for 2 years. He moved in 6 months ago. Recently, he'd been pushing for engagement, talking about our future, our empire. I told him I wasn't ready yet. He said he understood. Apparently he didn't. I didn't text him, I didn't comment, I didn't react. I called the DMV. After 37 minutes on hold, the woman on the line confirmed it in a flat, practiced voice. The vehicle was registered in his name. The transfer had gone through while I was out of town for work, on a day he claimed he was sick. I hung up and checked my banking app. The car was paid off. At least he hadn't taken out a loan against it. Then I did something that would matter later. I screen recorded everything, his post, his stories, the videos of him and his friends cruising around, music blasting, laughing about leveling up while my car keys sat proudly on the table. And then I made one phone call. I reported the car stolen. 3 days later, he got pulled over with his friends filming for Instagram. And that's how my boyfriend was arrested for grand theft auto, live, on social media. When I met him, nothing about him felt dangerous. He was charming in a quiet way, observant, attentive, the kind of man who listened more than he spoke. We met through mutual friends at a small gathering, one of those low-key nights where conversation drifted easily and nobody was trying too hard. He laughed at my jokes. I noticed how he leaned in when I talked, like what I was saying mattered. At the time, I liked that. We started seeing each other casually at first. Coffee after work. Long walks where the city noise softened into background hum. He remembered details, my favorite takeout, the way I took my coffee, the fact that I hated loud bars. He made me feel chosen. Looking back, that mattered more to me than I realized. I had worked hard for my life, my career, my independence. I paid my own bills, bought my own car, built stability brick by brick. I wasn't looking for someone to rescue me, and he seemed to respect that. He admired it, even. "You're impressive," he used to say. Not intimidating, not too much, just impressive. 6 months in, the tone shifted subtly. He started talking in we instead of you. Our future, our plans, our life. It didn't feel wrong, just fast. But I told myself that was what commitment looked like, that comfort sometimes disguised itself as momentum. When he moved in, it felt practical. He was already staying over most nights. He framed it as temporary at first, saving money, figuring out his next step. I agreed, with clear boundaries. My place, my rules, my finances stayed separate. He agreed easily, too easily. At first, he was helpful. Cooked dinner, picked up groceries, complimented the way I kept things organized, told me I was good at adulting, like it was a joke, but also not. Then came the comments. Small ones. "Must be nice not having to worry about money." "You're lucky you're so established." "I'm just trying to catch up to you." I brushed them off. Everyone has insecurities. Relationships are about reassurance, right? He started borrowing my car occasionally. At first it made sense. His was unreliable, in and out of the shop. He always asked, always returned it with a full tank. Sometimes he'd wash it without me asking. "See," he'd say, smiling, "I take care of your things." I believed him. Around the 1-year mark, the engagement talk intensified. He sent me rings he liked, mentioned timelines, told me his family was asking questions. When I said I wasn't ready, his disappointment was quiet but heavy. "I just want to build something together," he said once, eyes steady on mine. "I do," I replied. just not rushed. He nodded, said he understood. But soon after, his social media changed. Motivational quotes, posts about knowing your worth, about cutting people off who didn't support your growth, about manifesting abundance. I didn't think they were about me. The truth is, none of the warning signs were explosive. They were incremental. Boundary tests disguised as vulnerability. Entitlement dressed up as partnership. I thought love meant compromise. I didn't realize he thought love meant access. By the time I left town for that work conference, I believed we were in a good place. Stable. Maybe not perfect, but honest. I trusted him. That trust is what he forged his signature over. The first time something felt off, it wasn't loud. It was a pause. We were standing in the kitchen one evening, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence between us. I was sorting mail, absently flipping envelopes into piles, when he leaned against the counter and watched me a little too closely. "You're really good with money," he said. It wasn't a compliment. Not exactly. There was something measuring in his tone, like he was taking inventory. "I have to be," I replied, sliding a credit card statement back into its envelope. "No one else is going to do it for me." He smiled, but his eyes lingered on the paperwork longer than necessary. From then on, he started asking questions. Casual ones, framed as curiosity. How much I paid in insurance, whether my car was fully paid off, if I'd ever thought about combining finances once we were married. When, not if, I answered carefully. We were partners, not business partners. I reminded him of that. He laughed it off, kissed my cheek, said I worried too much. But the questions kept coming. He began talking about my car differently. Not your car anymore. The car. Sometimes even ours. When I corrected him, he'd shrug. "It's just a word," he said. "Relax." He borrowed it more often, longer stretches. Sometimes he didn't ask, just texted me after the fact. "Took the car, be back later." No question mark. When I brought it up, his reaction wasn't apologetic, it was wounded. "I thought we were past asking permission," he said quietly. "I live here." That sentence sat wrong in my chest. I tried to explain that boundaries weren't walls, they were respect. He listened, arms crossed, jaw tight, then nodded. "Got it," he said. But his behavior didn't change. He started making jokes around friends. "She's the responsible one. She's got everything together. She doesn't really need me." Everyone laughed. I smiled too, but something inside me recoiled. It felt like he was slowly rewriting the story, me as the provider, him as the partner entitled to benefit from it. The engagement pressure escalated. He talked about rings again, more insistently this time. Showed me a jeweler's page he'd saved. Mentioned how his parents believed commitment should come with shared assets. "Our families will expect us to act like a unit," he said one night, voice calm but firm. I told him marriage didn't magically erase ownership. That love wasn't a transfer of title. He went quiet. Too quiet. A few days later, I noticed he'd gone through my filing cabinet. It was subtle, the folders slightly out of order, the drawer not closing as smoothly. When I asked him about it, he didn't deny it. "I was just looking for the warranty information," he said, "in case something happens to the car." That explanation should have reassured me. Instead, my stomach tightened. Then came the social media posts, more aggressive now. Quotes about women supporting men through their growth, about loyalty, about being willing to invest in someone's potential. I started to feel like I was being softened up, conditioned. The final warning came the week before my work trip. He mentioned, almost casually, that if anything ever happened to me, he'd know how to handle my affairs. Said it like a joke, smiled afterward, waiting for me to laugh. I didn't. He noticed. "You don't trust me?" he asked. I looked at him then, really looked. The way his smile didn't reach his eyes, the way he held my gaze a second too long. "I trust myself," I said. He didn't like that answer. And I didn't realize, not yet, that while I was gone, he'd decided to prove just how much access he thought he deserved. I was out of town when it happened. A routine work conference, early flights, long meetings, hotel coffee that tasted like regret. Nothing about that trip felt significant at the time. If anything, I remember feeling relieved, space to think, distance from the low-grade tension that had settled into our apartment. The morning I left, he texted me. "Not feeling great. Might stay home today." I told him to rest, to take care of himself. I even offered to order soup to the apartment. He replied with a heart emoji. That was the last normal interaction we had. I came back 3 days later to a place that felt subtly wrong. Not trashed, not obviously disturbed, just shifted. Like furniture moved half an inch in the dark. The filing cabinet drawer resisted when I pulled it open, then slid out too easily, as if it had been opened and closed too many times. I told myself I was imagining it. We barely spoke that night. He said he was tired. I was exhausted. We slept back to back, inches apart, the silence between us louder than any argument. 2 days later, I saw the post. My phone buzzed during lunch. A notification from Instagram. His username. I almost ignored it. I wish I had. There he was, leaning against my BMW, sunlight catching the curve of the hood like it belonged to him, my keys dangling from his fingers, his smile wide, triumphant. Just bought my dream car. My heart dropped so hard I felt dizzy. I opened the comments. Friends celebrating, asking for rides, congratulating him on the purchase. Someone joked about him finally leveling up. He liked every single comment. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling, trying to make sense of it. I refreshed the page, checked again. Still there. I didn't call him. I didn't text. I called the DMV. 37 minutes on hold. I paced my office, nails digging into my palm, rehearsing explanations that shouldn't have been necessary. When the representative finally came back on the line and said the registration had been transferred, my ears rang. Transferred, completed, legal. In his name. I asked when. Last Monday. The day I flew out. The day he said he was sick. I hung up and opened my banking app. No new loans. No liens. At least he hadn't taken out debt against it. Then the truth hit me with brutal clarity. He hadn't taken my car by force. He'd taken it with paperwork. Forgery. Fraud. A calculated move executed while I was gone. I opened Instagram again, this time with intention. I screen recorded everything. His post, his stories, the brunch videos, my keys on the table, the captions about cutting dead weight, about knowing your worth. He was documenting his crime for an audience. And then I made the call that changed everything. I reported the car stolen. I didn't warn him. I didn't give him a chance to explain. I didn't owe him that anymore. 3 days later, while he was driving with his friends, music loud, phones recording, confidence unchecked, red and blue lights flashed behind him. And in that moment, the lie he built collapsed into something undeniable. Handcuffs. Charges. Reality. I didn't find out about the arrest right away. For about an hour, my phone stayed eerily quiet. No messages, no missed calls, just the steady hum of my office and the faint click of my keyboard as I pretended to work, my mind looping over everything I'd done in the last few days. I knew it was coming. I just didn't know how loud it would be. Then my phone exploded. Notifications stacked on top of each other. Texts, missed calls, DMs from people I hadn't spoken to in months. Mutual friends. His cousins. Someone I barely remembered meeting at a birthday party once. What did you do? Why would you do this to him? This is extreme. I opened Instagram. Someone had saved the live. The video was shaky, chaotic. Filmed from the passenger seat, laughter at first, music blasting, then confusion. His voice, sharp, defensive, asking if he'd done something wrong. The officer's tone calm, repetitive. The moment the words Grand Theft Auto landed, his confidence shattered. He screamed, actually screamed. This is my car! She's doing this because she's bitter. That part hit harder than I expected. Not the accusation. I'd already seen that version of him, but the ease with which he said it, like he'd rehearsed the narrative, like he truly believed he was the victim of my boundaries. I closed the app. My hands were shaking now, not from doubt, but from adrenaline, from the delayed impact of finally seeing the consequence play out in real time. The first call I answered was his mother. She didn't say hello. How could you have my son arrested over a car? Her voice was sharp, righteous, already convinced of his innocence. He stole my car, I said evenly. He forged my signature and transferred the title while I was out of town. He said you gave it to him. I laughed once, short and humorless. Then why did he text me asking to borrow it after the transfer date? Silence. This is vindictive, she snapped. You're ruining his life over a breakup. He ruined his own life when he committed multiple felonies. She hung up on me. That opened the floodgates. Friends messaged me, furious. You weren't even using the car. He's facing prison time over something so stupid. Each message carried the same assumption, that what he did was small, forgivable, that I was supposed to absorb the loss quietly to protect his future. I screenshot everything and sent it to the detective. He told me not to engage. So I didn't. Still, the hardest moment came that night, scrolling past his posts, now deleted, and seeing his mother's comments under the old photos. So proud of my son. Hard work pays off. I stared at the screen, a hollow ache settling in my chest. Not guilt, not regret. Grief. Not for the relationship, but for the illusion I'd lived inside. The belief that love meant safety. That trust would be honored simply because it existed. I sat on the edge of my bed, the apartment quiet, his things already boxed in the garage. I realized something then, with startling clarity. I wasn't heartbroken. I was done. The arrest didn't slow anything down. It made everything worse. A week later, I learned he'd been bailed out. His parents posted $15,000 to get him released after 3 days. One of the conditions was clear: no contact with me. He wasn't allowed to drive any vehicle registered in my name. Not that he had one anymore. You'd think that would have been the end of it. It wasn't. The first move was narrative control. He went back to social media with a long, rambling post about financial abuse, about how I'd promised him the car and then punished him when he stood up for himself. He framed himself as a man betrayed by a vindictive woman who couldn't handle being challenged. Complete fiction. The comments were split. Some of his friends rallied behind him instantly. Others asked questions he couldn't answer. So did she give you the car or not? Why were you arrested if it was yours? Forgery is serious, man. He deleted the post within an hour. Then came the next escalation. His new girlfriend contacted me. I didn't know he had one. Apparently neither did the no contact order. She didn't text, she called. "Hey," she said cautiously. "I'm with him now. He told me what happened. He made a mistake. He's really broken up about it." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "You're calling me from his phone," I said slowly. "That means he's violating a court order." Silence. "That's another charge," I added, "just so you know." The call ended immediately. I didn't hesitate. I called the detective and reported it. He was arrested again that night. According to the police report, when officers arrived, he claimed she had used his phone without permission, while standing right next to him. The judge didn't buy it. His bail was revoked. He spent another week in jail before his parents could get a second hearing. This time, bail was set at $25,000. The judge warned him plainly, one more violation, and he'd stay locked up until trial. That should have scared him. Instead, his mother tried again. She showed up at my apartment unannounced. I opened the door to find her standing there, eyes red, hands clasped like she was about to pray. "Please," she said. "He's learned his lesson. This is destroying our family." "He stole my car," I replied. "He forged legal documents. He's just a boy who made a mistake. He's a grown man who committed multiple felonies." She stepped closer. Her knees actually buckled. "I'm begging you," she whispered. "Just tell them you gave him permission." I stared at her, stunned. "You're asking me to lie under oath," I said, "to commit perjury. I'm asking you to have mercy." Mercy. Where was that mercy when he was posing with my car online? When he was laughing about leveling up? When he called me bitter to excuse his theft? I told her to leave. When she didn't, I told her I'd call the police. She left in tears. By then, the truth was unavoidable. This was no longer just about the car. It was about entitlement so deep it refused to acknowledge consequences. A family willing to sacrifice my integrity to protect his delusions. And I realized something that night, sitting alone in my apartment, the silence heavy but clear. He wasn't escalating because he thought he was right. He was escalating because he couldn't accept that I'd taken control. The quiet after the escalation was worse than the chaos. No new posts, no messages, no sudden appearances at my door, just waiting. 2 weeks passed before the next blow landed, and it didn't come from him. It came in an email. The subject line read, "You win." I stared at it for a long moment before opening it, my finger hovering over the trackpad, my pulse slow but heavy. I already knew this violated the no contact order. Part of me wondered if that was the point. The message was long, rambling, bitter. He wrote about how I had ruined his life, how he'd loved me, how I was heartless for choosing a car over a person. He accused me of humiliating him, of weaponizing the system, of proving that I never really cared. Not once did he say I'm sorry. Not once did he acknowledge what he'd done. Halfway through reading, my vision blurred, not with tears, but with rage so controlled it scared me. My hand shook as I forwarded the email to the detective. Another violation, another arrest. This time his parents didn't rush to defend him publicly. The preliminary hearing came quickly after that. I sat in the courtroom, hands folded in my lap, listening as evidence stacked itself into something undeniable. The forged signatures, the fake notary stamp he'd ordered online, the DMV transfer documents, the social media posts bragging about the purchase, the text messages. Then came the part that hollowed me out. His best friend had flipped. To save herself from conspiracy charges, she handed over everything. Screenshots of messages where they planned it together. DMV doesn't verify signatures. It's easy. He won't do anything. He owes me anyway. I felt my chest tighten as those words were read aloud. Not because they surprised me, but because they confirmed something I hadn't wanted to admit. This wasn't impulsive. It was calculated. Then the prosecutor revealed his search history. How to forge signatures. Penalty for forging car title. Can you go to jail for stealing boyfriend's car? He'd Googled the crime before committing it. I stared straight ahead as his lawyer tried to frame it as a misunderstanding between romantic partners. Claimed I'd given implied permission. The judge didn't even hide his disbelief. Implied permission to use a vehicle, he said dryly, does not extend to fraudulently transferring ownership. That was the moment I felt it, the final break. Not relief, not victory. Loss. Not of him, but of the version of my life where I believed love protected me from this kind of betrayal. He started sobbing. His mother wailed behind him. His father stared at the floor, shoulders slumped. I felt nothing. As I walked out of this courthouse, the weight hit me all at once. I sat in my car, and rested my forehead against the steering wheel, breathing through the ache in my chest. This was the darkest part. Not the theft, not the arrest, but realizing how completely I'd misjudged the man I let into my life and how close I'd come to handing him everything. The turning point didn't feel triumphant. It felt procedural, cold, fluorescent lit, and irreversible. The day of the preliminary hearing, I took the stand. Swore to tell the truth. My voice didn't shake when I testified. That surprised me. I spoke clearly about buying the car, paying for it in full, keeping the title in my name, about being out of town when the transfer happened, about never signing anything, never authorizing anything. Facts have weight when emotion is stripped away. His attorney tried to soften the edges, framed it as a lover's dispute, suggested I'd given implied permission because we lived together, because we were planning a future, because love, apparently, blurred legal boundaries. The judge shut that down fast. Implied permission does not extend to transferring ownership, he said flatly. This is not a civil misunderstanding. This is alleged fraud. That was when the power shifted. Not because I won, but because the truth no longer belonged to him. The prosecutor laid everything out. The forged signatures. Amateurish, barely resembling mine. The fake notary stamp he'd ordered online. The timestamps on the DMV transfer lining up perfectly with my travel records. The Instagram posts bragging about buying the car. Every caption turned into evidence. Every story preserved and logged. Then came the text messages. Between him and his friend. Planning. Reassuring each other. Laughing about how I wouldn't do anything. How possession was basically ownership. How I owed him after 2 years together. I kept my eyes forward as they were read aloud. The final blow was his search history. He'd Googled the crime before committing it. That detail sucked the air out of the room. The judge ruled there was more than enough evidence to proceed to trial. He broke down then, sobbing, shoulders shaking. His mother cried openly in the gallery. His father didn't look at him. As I stood to leave, something inside me finally clicked into place. I wasn't responsible for the fallout. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't vindictive. I was simply no longer protecting him from the consequences of his choices. Outside the courtroom, his new girlfriend approached me. Her voice was tight, defensive. You destroyed his life over a car. I met her gaze, steady and calm. He destroyed his life when he stole it. Security stepped in before she could say more. I walked out of the building alone, sunlight sharp against my skin, my steps lighter than they had been in weeks. For the first time since the Instagram post, I felt it. Not anger, not grief, clarity. The fallout didn't arrive all at once. It came in waves, slow, relentless, unavoidable. 2 months after the preliminary hearing, he took a plea deal. His lawyer finally convinced him that a trial would only make things worse. The evidence was overwhelming. There was no version of this story where he walked away clean. He pleaded guilty. The charges were reduced but still devastating. Grand theft auto downgraded, forgery, identity theft. The sentence landed like a dull thud in the courtroom. 6 months in jail with good behavior, 3 years of probation, a $5,000 fine, restitution for my legal fees, community service, and a felony record that would follow him forever. I sat there, hands folded, listening as his future narrowed into paperwork and consequences. He didn't look at me. The day after sentencing, his father called. Not his mother, not his friends. His father. His voice was quieter than I expected, worn down. "I want to apologize," he said. "We raised him wrong. We gave him everything. Never made him face consequences. This is on us too." I thanked him for the honesty, if nothing else. Then he said something I didn't expect. "I'm paying your legal fees. All of them. Already sent the check to your lawyer." I told him he didn't have to. "I do," he replied. "Maybe if we'd held him accountable earlier, this wouldn't have happened." He was the only one in that family who understood. Meanwhile, the noise online didn't stop. His friends tried to launch a Free Him campaign that went nowhere. His closest ally posted about how the system criminalized relationship disputes. Someone with common sense commented underneath, "He literally stole a car and forged documents. That's not a dispute. That's a felony." The prosecutor used every single Instagram post as evidence, every caption, every story, every smug, boss energy moment turned into an exhibit. He documented his own downfall in real time. I got my car back, had to pay impound fees, but insurance covered most of it. When I sat behind the wheel again, the leather felt familiar, solid, mine. Still drove like a dream. He, on the other hand, kept spiraling. Even after conviction, he couldn't let go of the narrative. He had his friend post a message came from him, saying I'd gotten my revenge, that I couldn't handle a strong man who went after what he wanted. Going after what you want, apparently, now meant stealing. 6 months later, he got out early on good behavior, moved back in with his parents, couldn't get approved for an apartment, couldn't find work that didn't involve a background check. Even the online schemes he used to brag about didn't want him anymore. I ran into his best friend at a coffee shop one afternoon. She tried to duck out, but I was between her and the door. "She told me it was stupid," she said quickly, "but she thought you'd never actually do anything." "Why would she think that?" I asked. She hesitated. "Because he said you were weak." I laughed, not loudly, just once. "How'd that work out for him?" She didn't answer. We parted ways. That was the last I heard from any of them. Almost. A few days later, I got a LinkedIn notification. Profile viewed. It was him. No message, no request, just curiosity. I clicked his profile out of my own. He'd listed his time in jail as a personal growth sabbatical. The entitlement hadn't died. It had evolved. I didn't feel triumphant when it was over. I felt steady. The noise faded first. No more messages from strangers. No more updates forwarded by friends. No more sudden spikes of adrenaline when my phone buzzed. Life returned to its normal rhythm. Work, quiet mornings, evenings that belonged entirely to me again. I kept the car. I added a GPS tracker, a steering wheel lock, a hidden kill switch. Not out of fear, but out of clarity. Boundaries aren't paranoia. They're protection learned the hard way. I dated someone new for a few months. It didn't last, and that was okay. I wasn't rushing anymore. I paid attention to how people spoke about money, about entitlement, about what they thought they deserved from others. I listened when someone joked about access like it was affection. Because that's where this started, not with a crime. With small boundary violations I ignored, comments disguised as insecurity, pressure framed as love, assumptions wrapped in intimacy. He didn't wake up one day and steal a car. He crossed lines gradually, testing how much he could take before I pushed back. I won't make that mistake again. My credit is intact. My record is clean. My life is peaceful. I still take the long way home sometimes, just because I can. Windows down, engine smooth, the quiet hum of something I earned and kept. He's living with his parents, taking the bus, calling it a journey on social media. That's not karma. That's consequence. And to anyone who told me I went too far, ask yourself this. If someone stole $52,000 from you through fraud, would you shrug it off or would you protect yourself? Exactly. If you're in a relationship where someone pushes for access before trust, where they get angry when you set boundaries, where what's yours is mine shows up before commitment, pay attention. It escalates. I learned that the hard way. But I also learned something else. Standing up for yourself doesn't make you cruel. It makes you free. And yes, the BMW still drives like a dream. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you for staying with me through this story. I know stories like this can be uncomfortable because they force us to look at moments we've all ignored at some point. The small red flags, the jokes that weren't really jokes, the pressure disguised as love, the way entitlement creeps in quietly before it ever explodes. If this story resonated with you, if you've been in a relationship where your boundaries were tested, minimized, or crossed, I see you. You're not dramatic. You're not heartless. And you're not wrong for protecting what you worked hard to build. I've received so many messages from people sharing similar experiences, and I want to say this clearly. You're not alone, and it's never too late to choose yourself. If this story helped you in any way, please consider leaving a comment. Share your thoughts, your experiences, or even just a word of support. It matters more than you think. If you know someone who needs to hear this, share the video with them. And if you want more real stories about boundaries, betrayal, and rebuilding from the ashes, don't forget to subscribe. Take care of yourselves, protect your peace, and don't let anyone convince you that standing up for yourself is a crime. I'll see you in the next story.